Welcome to the Kids First Co-Parenting Podcast, the podcast for smart, intentional, millennial moms raising resilient kids after separation and divorce. I'm Dr. Carolyn Royster, a child psychologist, coach, and a mom. After thousands of therapy hours with kids caught in the middle of high-conflict households, I'm here to help moms like you do it differently. From peaceful co-parenting to total chaos, I've got you. This is Kids First Co-Parenting. I am so excited to introduce you all to my friend and colleague, Alexandra Harrison, who you'll notice I call Alex throughout the interview. She is just a wealth of information about step-parent families and blending families in a way that when I met her, I started learning all this interesting stuff because it was just not things that I knew before. And she's just so good at sharing this really in-depth clinical knowledge in a way that is so relatable and refreshing. And I work with a lot of families, as you all know, kind of post-decree or right as things are really challenging. But for a lot of folks, when they move on and they start dating again and repartnering, there's a whole nother set of challenges that come with that, both in the marriage and in supporting our kids. And so that is why I invited Alex on the podcast. You are going to love this conversation. Even if you're not in a place where you're dating right now, I think you're going to get a lot out of it, maybe in the future. But if you are in the process of blending a family, then you absolutely need to listen to this. Alex Harrison is a licensed clinical social worker and therapist who has spent the last 15 years helping couples and families find ways to do life together. As both a step-family coach and a card-carrying member of the Bonus Moms Club, she helps people build connection, calm the chaos, and develop the skills that truly work in step-family life. Please welcome my guest, Alex. I'm very excited to have you here, Alex. We are newfound friends.
Indeed. Yeah,
And
it's
colleagues,
so good to be
but
here.
we really, really hit it off, didn't we?
We did. Yeah, we're definitely in adjacent areas of practice,
Yeah.
which has been really fun to connect.
Well, I'm really excited to talk to you because I think that your specialty is sort of the next step after what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And it really truly is not my training. Like it's just not really a lot of what I do. And so I like having folks that I can refer to about some of these dynamics that have more training and more expertise. Why don't you start with just kind of telling us what it is that you do and what it is you love to do
Yeah.
professionally?
Like many of us who, work in the helping profession, a lot of our areas of niche and specialty end up being tied to areas that we have a particular vested interest or area of care. And I certainly count myself as one of
Uh-huh.
those people. So I have been working with couples and families in a clinical setting, including acute treatment setting, for 15 years. And I'm a social worker, so I'm very much a systems thinker. And I love working around family dynamics. So that's where I really couched my practice for quite a long time. Done a lot of training, obviously, specifically in couples work. What was interesting to me and what really brought me into caring about step family dynamics was becoming a part of a step family. I mean, I was married for 15 years, and most of those years were pretty good years. And then I got divorced and had a couple years of single parenting or half-time parenting, shared custody with my ex-husband. Did some dating, re-entered dating for the first time at 37, and I
Oh,
got married really young. So it was an interesting experience to go back out there in the age of dating apps. And that's how I met my now husband. After a couple years of dating and trying people out and learning what was really important to me, I found my husband. We did what, from a researched clinical perspective, you're not supposed to do, which is move pretty fast. Met and got married within a year
mm-hmm.
and moved in and combined families just outside of a year of
Yeah.
having met each other. When we met, newly 2 and newly 4. And then we
Cuties.
moved in, they were 3 and 5. And my girls, I had a daughter who had just started high school and a daughter in grade school. So we were combining 2 different sets of ages, like very different stages of development, basically like 3 different stages of child
Yeah,
development.
big
Um
age gaps there.
mhm, yeah. And, you know, it was one of those things that, again, lots of us do when we are forming a step family. We have a lot of hope, a lot of optimism. We feel like, okay, we have found our person. This is great. The kids get along. I really thought, okay, I have so much training. I have so much knowledge in what families need and how couple dynamics work well. What could go wrong? And and the truth is, it was really, really hard. I mean, within the first 9 months especially, I mean, it did not take long for us to be really struggling in terms of what our roles were supposed to be, what expectations were we each supposed to have for our children, our stepchildren, um, and, you know, our marriage felt pretty strained. The kids were struggling in their adjustment. And it was definitely that feeling of like, okay, I knew this was going to be hard. Like, it's like one of those things like you intellectually
Yeah,
know, but
yeah,
it's another thing to really deeply feel
and to
how
live it.
hard. Yes.
Yes.
And we were smart in the sense that we went straight to couples therapy and started addressing the relationship issues, which helped tremendously. And at the same time, there was this gap in really understanding like something's missing. We were going to a therapist at the time who was very focused on the couple first. And my husband, especially, did not feel good about that. He felt
Mhm.
too much pull towards his kids and felt like, a couples first approach was gonna mean, somehow not giving his kids what they needed. And I was kinda scratching my head within that as well. I kind of pivoted from a professional curiosity perspective and also really wanting to figure out my personal life and started really diving into this whole body of research that we have on what works and what doesn't work when it comes to step family dynamics.
Mhm. And we're
Oh, go ahead.
definitely gonna talk about that a lot more.
Mhm.
I'm curious I'm curious when you said you did it wrong, because in my mind, and a lot of the women and sometimes men that I work with, I think there's a lot of chatter around after the initial separation or divorce, don't rush into something. And so
Right.
as you're telling your story, I'm like, but there was a lot of time in between there. So
Mhm.
it's not just about how quickly you repartner, but also how quickly once you repartner that moves that
Yes.
relationship. Okay.
Yeah. Mhm. I fell within, like, the statistical norm for women, which is, like, 2 to 4 years to repartner and
Interesting.
remarry, and my husband fell exactly in the statistical norm for men, which is within 18 months.
So he was on the quicker side.
He was on the quicker side.
Why do you think men, maybe this is not something you know or there's evidence on, but why do men repartner quicker, do you
I
think?
mean, I think it's varied reasons. I also think it depends on the age of kids. I mean,
Mhm.
I can tell you when my husband and I got together, I mean, I can give an anecdotal reason. I mean, we were not together very long before we were having the conversation around like, what do you want? What do you want from this relationship? What do you ultimately want for your kids? And his response was like, I want to rebuild a family.
Mm,
I mean, he had young kids and, wanted them to be in a place of stability.
yeah,
I also think, and again, anecdotally and just personally, I don't think men are great at being alone.
yeah. I think sometimes too, when they are by themselves, they realize, I mean, I think we all do, just how much of the mental load is there and how much work that is. And
Oh, yes.
that's hard for anybody to be
Oh, yes.
single. And then you add on divorce dynamics and you have a whole nother, with some folks that have more higher conflict divorces.
Yes.
That's a
Well,
real
I do
challenge.
think that, some parents are looking for help
Hmm.
when they're repartnering,
Yeah.
and
And companionship.
right, 100%, and I think, like, this is one of those moments where it's like, okay, 2 things are true. I really, really want help, and my new step-parent partner is actually not as poised as I would like to be in a position to give the help that I'm desperately wanting.
Interesting. Talk to me about that second part. the new step parent not being, do you think it's because they're not actually the biological parent, and so they have to do so much more work to get to that caregiving place?
Yeah, I mean, when we're just talking about, the idea of like biological wiring towards attachment. Parents are hardwired to see their kids from this loving, generous lens. They are wired to seek out soothing and connecting with their kids, and their kids are hardwired to seek out their parent as the primary source of comfort and connection and soothing.
Mhm.
Everybody else, they're just not. And it just takes a lot more time. And I can have all the good as a step parent, I can have all the good intentions and all the affinity for my stepkids that anyone could muster. And it doesn't mean that my stepkids see me as a primary source of comfort and connection and soothing. They will always look to their dad.
Mhm.
So when it comes to discipline, and active parenting.
Yeah.
This especially happens with younger kids, but teenagers around like limits and boundary setting and things like that. When bio parent corrects their kid's behavior, hey, you smacked your brother around, you need to go spend some time in your room and take a break. That is going to land very differently for that child coming from their biological parent than it's going to land if a step parent delivers that same discipline, even if it's delivered with the same tone,
Yeah.
all of it. It
And we've
just is going to
talked
happen
about it.
different.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because as a child clinician, the person that sees the kid who then is adjusting to a new step parent, I will often tell parents the piece you need to remember here is that a new partner is a new layer of grief for
Yes.
kids. And so not only are you adjusting to everything you just said and working against biology in some ways, they could have been divorced for 10 years, but that final wish of maybe my parents will get back together
Yes.
is officially dead when the
It's
new person comes in.
it is so real, Carolyn.
So there's
It's
a whole
so
nother,
real.
for the kid, just from the child perspective, there's that whole other layer of grief that's being managed.
Yes.
And I think the other piece you and I are we're talking about this almost in terms of neurotypical kids. We're not even like there's even another layer when it's kids with ADHD or autism or social difficulties or
Absolutely.
medical difficulties where there's intricacies and things that are hard for the family.
Absolutely. Well, and that's one of those areas that we have actually has been some good study around, which, and so here's what we
Ooh,
know
tell me.
overall. We know that as the rate of change for kids increases, their well being decreases. It's not just feelings of grief and loss around my parents aren't ever going to get back together, like the true loss of that like magical thinking belief. It's also I might be changing schools. I might be changing houses. Maybe now I'm having to share a room.
Share a room. Yes.
I'm having to share space. I'm having to share my parents' energy and
Yes. And
time
attention.
and attention. All of those things where we as parents, as we're, repartnering, and again, we've got all this optimism and hope that we're building something great for each other and for our kids. It's so easy to pivot away from and minimize the
Yeah.
realness of those felt losses and changes. And we do know that the rate of change in terms of like decreasing kids' well-being is more for kids who are not neurotypical. And in those cases, we really do recommend, and I make these recommendations to clients pretty regularly. You have to take things especially slow. There's even an idea of what we call living apart together or living together apart, where for some kids that are, for example, have an autism spectrum disorder diagnosis, it may actually serve them better developmentally for their parents not to move in and combine with another
Mhm.
family because the amount of need is just too high and the disruption is too intense.
Yeah.
And so those decisions can become to very slowly uh, know a couple folks who each have kids who are neurodivergent and have chosen to be together but keep their separate homes because this is how they hold the needs of their kids that are unique and special and ever changing,
Yeah.
with the knowledge that we still want to be together and our ability to be together well will hold better if we're actually living
Yeah.
apart, which is, man, that's
That's
another
wild.
layer of grief that one would
Yeah.
have to deal with, right?
And I think what's so interesting about that is that I often hear from parents, it's a little bit of an aside, but who have children with higher needs, whatever they might be, just how isolating that is. And so to
Yes.
find a partner
Mhm,
that gets it is so
mhm.
beautiful, but having to like, you really do have to think a little bit differently about
Yeah,
how you do it.
and that's
And
pretty unusual. I mean, that's not
yeah,
common
yeah,
with every kid who's neurotypical. Or is
of
not
course.
neurotypical. I don't wanna paint a picture that, like, if your kid has
That's how you have to do it.
raging ADHD, then you need to live together apart, like, that's not what I'm saying.
No. But there are ways to make it work, is kind of your point.
Mhm.
Obviously, you do a lot of couples therapy work, but this, you found that the way to support these families tends to be more through the coaching lens. And so, talk to me a little bit about how step parent coaching works. Who is there? Who do you talk to?
Yeah.
How is it different?
Yeah. Well, we're definitely primarily dealing with a couple, 2 partners together. Sometimes we're bringing in co-parents.
Yeah,
Um,
wild.
yep, it
All the
can
power
be.
to you. I don't want any
It
of that
can
noise.
be. Because again, when everyone's trying to adjust to what can we do that's in the service of these kids and also in the service of these homes, these separate homes that we're trying to cultivate and make, healthy and functioning. Um, and we primarily, it's what I do with people in the coaching realm. It's a whole lot of psychoeducation, a lot of really helping people understand that there are some core challenges that every step family faces, every step family. Um, and the piece around normalizing these core challenges is so important because, similarly to what you were saying about it's kind of isolating to parent kids that have, a set of particular challenges. It can also be pretty isolating to exist within a step family because most of culture is still framed around a first time family lens, and as much as we would love to say that there's no stigma around divorce and recoupling anymore, there still is,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Because
Yeah.
underlying the existence of every step family is some kind of brokenness,
Ugh,
that is real and
yeah.
true.
But
And
even
even
hearing you
if
say that, I'm like, they're not broken, but I
right?
see what you're saying. Like they've
Yeah,
come from a place.
some kind
Yeah.
of loss and grief process,
Or
right?
rupture. Hmm.
Yeah, exactly. People don't get married,
We're going to get
assuming it's
divorced.
probably gonna end or my
Yeah.
spouse is going to die,
Yeah.
that's not part of the story. And then we can do the work internally to work through that brokenness and, like, find new joy and fulfillment, and other people's perceptions are other people's perceptions,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so that can be really challenging. I think a big part of what I do is really helping to normalize for couples what is baked in to step family life. What are the challenges that are just kind of naturally occurring, and help also tease out, what's a normal problem versus what's an outlier? What is the difference between a child who is just showing up in what feels difficult, that is completely developmentally appropriate, versus actually this feels more related to a grief and adjustment response
Hmm.
given the new family structure,
Yeah.
right? Helping parents really, like, decrease the amount of shame and blame that they tend to take on, because man, as parents, aren't we so good at when our kids are struggling, the first thought is like, "Oh
Obviously
my
me.
god, how did I mess this up? What did
Yeah.
I
I
do wrong?"
obviously did it. Yeah. And by the way, listeners, for any clinician to be like, there is always something, every family has this, is quite, I don't know, impactful because we're of the mind of it depends and well, I'd have to know the situation. And so I'm really curious what you started talking about it, but what some of those things are that feel like they're always there that
Mhm.
you have to look at
Yep.
to be successful.
Yeah,
What are
yeah.
some of those things?
One of those core challenges is that kids experience a series of felt losses
Yes.
with the changes that come with forming a new step family. And the kids also experience what we call loyalty binds. It's really, really common, that feeling that if I lean towards this relationship with my step parent, getting closer and feeling more connected, there's also a part of me that somehow feels like I am in some way betraying my parent. And
Mhm.
usually it's the same gender parent. In other words, if I'm connecting with my stepmom, am I somehow betraying my actual mom? Am I
Mhm.
somehow negating parts of that relationship? And the thing is, those loyalty binds can be made stronger sometimes by the way that co-parent in the other household speaks about the new step parent can really reinforce those loyalty binds.
Mhm.
Sometimes even a well-meaning parent can reinforce those loyalty binds, but there are also ways to loosen those.
Mhm.
And even if you have a co-parent in the other household who really is their child developing a relationship with their stepmom,
Mhm.
I'm very lucky that the boys' mom has always really encouraged my relationship with the boys, and, that feels great. That doesn't mean that the kids don't still feel those loyalty
Right.
binds at times.
And I
It's
could see
just
it
very
going,
natural.
even if you had, I mean, even if in this, let's just take this example. Like, even if your mom has not shown up for you and is not a quote unquote present, attuned, perhaps they're off doing whatever, and you don't see them, there's still a bind, because then you have the grief around, but my biological mom couldn't do this. And that puts them in a, like, there's so many layers to it. And the other piece that that made me think about is a lot of the moms in my membership really like the new partner,
Yes.
because they can be very protective for kids,
Mhm.
right? And so
Yeah.
if you don't have a good relationship, they like that there's another person there that's loving on their kids,
Other set
paying
of eyes.
attention, another set of eyes, especially maternal eyes,
Mhm.
is what I would say.
Yeah.
That's very comforting for a lot of people. But
Yeah.
it is complicated.
Yeah, it is complicated. So other pretty common challenges with most step families that the task of parenting tends to
Yeah.
create polarization between parents and step parents. Also pretty common. I mean, it feels like almost universal through and this is borne out through quite a bit of research. 40 years ago we did not really have much research on step families. We
Yeah.
do now.
Yeah.
We really do. And what comes up over and over and over again in the research is that parents want their step parent partner to show up with more warmth and understanding and compassion and flexibility. And step parent partners almost universally want their parent partner to show up with more firmness and limits and age appropriate expectations and consequences.
Interesting. So
Mhm.
how that plays out is, I need you as my partner to be more loving and warm and attuned and, like, really lean into the relational piece. And they're saying, well, that's great, but also you're getting trampled and you need to
Mhm.
have more boundaries and
Yeah.
a little bit more firm line.
Yes. Yes,
Interesting.
exactly. And that's kind of where, like, what you said, a few minutes ago comes into play, like, for better or worse. You have this extra set of eyes, this, new partner, the step parent that's coming in. They don't have the biological attachment, that's true, but their outsider status also provides them with this observant perspective that can make them sometimes better at noticing, like, not the best patterns that are happening and, behavioral dynamics between parent child that could really use some tweaking and shaping. The
Mhm.
problem is usually in the delivery of that insight, right? And
Mhm.
also going in too hard and too fast with trying
Yeah.
to implement or encourage would be a light word to use, enforce or have control over how kids are parented. And when that's what happens, it really polarizes parents. Parents tend to become more permissive, and step parents tend to lean more towards authoritarian parenting.
Which is not gonna set you up to build a good relationship with the kid.
No, and it's not good for kids. It's not
And
what
it's not
kids
good for your
need in turn.
marriage either.
No, no, I can tell you firsthand that is definitely not good
Yeah.
for your marriage.
So your role as the coach, kind of you come in and you're like, I can kind of see I've been down this road. I've seen this road. I can help you see the potholes and we can learn, you know, better ways to drive. I don't know. The metaphor's falling apart a little bit. But the point
No,
is
I get you.
you are the might be the person that's like, okay, I see both your perspectives. How do we come to the middle?
Yes. So the other side of the education piece is really helping families start to learn new sets of skills and tools, actionable things that they can really bring home and start implementing and start trying. We frame it often as like running experiments around what if I approached my parent partner this way around, some of the pain points that I'm feeling in the house. What if I approached my step parent partner in this way? We do a lot of communication work. We also do a lot of skills and tools around parenting, because it is also really common that during those single parenting years, parents do become more permissive in their parenting style. And in a
I
lot of ways,
mean,
that makes sense.
survival.
Yes, you're in survival mode. Yes. And there's some truth to, man, if I only see my kid half the time, I don't want those hours, those days that I am with them to be full of a lot of limits and discipline and consequences. I think
That
that's the
sucks.
natural response. Or, if I'm in a situation where I know my kid is going from a high conflict co-parent and a chaotic, disorganized co-parent home back to mine, man, I just want my house to be this soft place to land. It makes so much sense why parenting styles in those single parenting years can become more permissive over time. The problem is that it creates a kind of power dynamic imbalance where kids are given more authority and decision making and
Mhm.
than they would normally have in your typical family dynamic. And then when a step parent comes into the scene, that's not exactly easy for them to swallow.
And are like, this is how it's gonna be. Like, we have some
Ex-
rules. Kids, you shouldn't talk to your mother that way, whatever it might be.
The work of learning how to realign is real work, and that's something that step family coaching can really, really help with, because the realignment isn't just good for the partnership, it's ultimately good for kids.
It
Because
is.
we know that good authoritative parenting where it's led with a lot of warmth and emotional responsiveness, but also reasonable limits that match age appropriate expectations, that's what's actually gonna help kids move forward and be confident and functional in the world. And
Mhm.
a lot of the things that I work with step couples on in step family coaching is if we can break away from the emotionality of the conflict, if we can also turn down the temperature of the conflict styles, especially, and refocus on a values, like frame things around like a values issue. What do you, parent, really care about the most in your heart of hearts when it comes to your parenting? What do you want your kids as adults to
To
be
say.
valuing and living out? What do you want to shape in them? And then, step parent, what matters to you? What are your values around that? What would you love to see your step kids hold and live out as adults? And
Mhm.
if we can start to really kind of change the context of the conversation to that, it really opens a lot of space for partners to see each other from a much more generous and, I would add, functional lens, and helps create a plan for working
Mhm.
forward as to like, okay, well, how are we both going to show up in a way that
Yeah.
lays forth a path to parent that way,
You
towards these
know,
values?
I just recently spoke to another coach, Andra, about just general divorce coaching. And she said something very similar. She was like, I work with a lot of my clients around what is it that you want at the end of this? Like, what really matters? Because I think you get so caught up and we all bring our own narratives to marriage. But when you're remarrying, you bring narratives from that marriage too, of like, well, I've been here before and I'm not going to deal with this again. And I think there's so many ways that that could go sideways, especially
Yes,
with somebody well intentioned who's not trying to. I think a lot about my moms who have come out of domestic violence and coercive control. And I imagine a whiff of that sends them into a triggered spot. And then we're not being
absolutely.
very productive in the dynamic. So, But one of the things I really wanted to talk to you about was you had explained to me and educated me on this because I had, I think, an antiquated view of it that when working with step parents, we really want to make sure the couple is okay. And if the couple's okay, then all the little people below them are, meaning the children.
Yes. Yeah.
And you were like, no, no, that's not how we do things anymore. And so I would, along the lines of how you're supporting them and working with them and coaching these families, which is so impactful. I would love to hear your thoughts on that again, just because it was really, really, I was like, what? Mind blown when you told me
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll frame it a little bit in the context of another one of the core challenges that step
Yes.
families face. And it's this: inherent within step family dynamics is this, what we call an stuck insiders and stuck outsiders.
Yeah. I remember you telling me about this.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
That these positions are stuck, they're real, and we have to learn how to navigate them differently to be effective as a couple and effective as parents and step parents. And so it looks a little something like this. This is an example that I frequently give because it's like very real in our
Yeah.
family. Early on, when we had blended households together and the boys were really young, like 3 and 5, this was a very common dynamic. We've taken care of the kids, we've fed them, they're settled. This is like a Saturday morning. And my husband and I are just sitting down in our little coffee nook off the kitchen, and we just want to connect for a little while and just
Yeah.
talk and just have a little breather after you whip up all the pancakes and whip up all the French toast. And it's like, okay, go play with your Legos. Go do.
Yes. Go be
Yes.
away.
And as is typical for little kids, 3 and 5, they're not going to entertain themselves for that long.
Yeah.
We would finally get into a groove of conversation, and a kid runs in, jumps on his lap, almost spills the coffee, demands his attention immediately. Look at what I drew. Look at what I'm building. Again, super normal kid behavior, but every time the boys would come and demand his attention, he would immediately move away from our conversation, immediately give the attention to the boys. And for me, in that moment, as a new wife, I'm just feeling pretty abandoned,
Yeah. Very rejected.
pretty stuck on the outside and not particularly valued and grumpy,
And I
right?
suppose too, it hurts a little bit that they're not showing it to you.
Yeah,
There's that piece too.
exactly. That, like, I feel like I am stuck on the outside. Now, and maybe in that moment, I shouldn't say maybe, this definitely happened where I would just be like, just
Ugh.
so that huff, that
Yes.
like the resignation is clear in my voice and clear on my body. I'm not throwing a
Mhm.
full on adult temper tantrum, but it's clear I'm not good. And my husband catches that out of the corner of his eye as he's tending to the kids. And suddenly he is feeling that stuck insider dynamic, that very visceral feeling that I'm stuck in the middle. If I turn towards my kids when they're looking for me, I am turning away from my partner. And if I were
Yeah.
to choose my partner instead, then I risk having my kids feel like they're being rejected or unchosen or turned away from in some way,
Yes.
right? That
How do
is
you
a
win that?
hard place
How do you
to
do
sit.
that?
Yeah. So exactly, that's the question. This kind of addresses a little bit of that question of like, well, who comes first? Is it our partnership? Are you putting me as the spouse first, or are you putting the kids first always? And the truth of the matter is that choosing to uphold any one as primary is basically a trap. If I continue parenting as I did during my single parenting years, where the needs and wants and emotions of my kids always come first 100% of the time, I'm setting myself up for a pretty lonely marriage. However, if
And
I
potentially kind of entitled kids,
yes,
right? Like, this
110%
isn't how the
yes.
world works. You don't.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. And this is
Yes.
a problem, by the way, in first time marriages where we
It
have
is.
decided to make the kids the focus and the center of the universe. And surprise, surprise, the marriage kind of relationship kind of deteriorates. That's why some people end up divorced in the first place because
Mhm.
they never really figured out how to balance that.
Yeah. Or this
However,
new movement of, like, a divorce where it's like after the kid not it's not new, it's been around, but after the kids are gone, we have nothing left. We haven't We haven't turned towards each other in 18 years.
Yeah. In the sense that the only demographic where the divorce rate is going up is among people 50 and over.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that is a new trend of
I
like,
learned that from Oprah, not the research, but from Oprah.
that's right. Yeah. She knows a
She
couple
just did a
things.
podcast on it.
She knows a couple things. So, okay. So if we know like it doesn't work for kids to come first 100% of the time in a step family, but it also doesn't work for a couple to be primary. That has always been the prevailing, in marriage therapy training. A lot of the theory framework is focused around the couple is primary. If the couple is good, the kids are going to be good. But it doesn't work in a step family because these relationships between parents and kids existed often for many years before this new partner ever came into the picture. So, you know, they have a shared history that
Yeah.
is much, much longer than my husband and I's shared history,
Mhm.
even if it's only by a few years, right? So the mantra that is both hard to hold but still kind of true is that the challenge for a step couple, and especially for the parent, is to learn how to hold both relationships with a level of high importance and intention. And the imagery that my mentor, Patricia Papernow, always uses is that of a gymnast propping themselves up on the rings, like holding the tension between both all the time. And if it sounds painful and kind of hard, it is.
Yeah.
And that's why step family life is challenging because to do it well, it's learning how to hold both most of the time, understanding that like you're not going to do it perfectly, but also recognizing that I'm keeping my eye towards my relationship and I'm keeping my eye towards parenting my kids and their needs.
Mhm.
Right. And over time, you do get better at it. You do get stronger. You learn to work those muscles, and there's more resilience when you mess up, right? But it is, in fact, a skill to learn.
And I think there's 2 pieces of this that stand out to me. There's the piece of if we both know we're trying to hold this tension.
Yes.
If I know you're on the rings and you know I'm on the rings, I can give you a little more grace. And I think there's probably a lot of what you were saying earlier, this communication around being able to say when it's really important that you turn towards me and being able to communicate why you turned towards your child when you did.
Yes.
If this is a kid that never shows you their work and doesn't usually invite you into their world, you're going to turn towards them in that moment. But if your wife is saying something heartfelt and sobbing her eyes out, it might be the time to turn towards her. I think a lot about the Gottmans. Obviously, I mean, you know that everybody knows the Gottmans, but John Gottman talks a lot about like little bids for
Yes.
attention. And this is what you're talking about, are these are small bids
Yes.
for your attention, for your love, for your reassurance, and we have to try to balance those.
Yes. And so I think that, where step family coaching can really come in is learning the skills of how can a couple learn to even have small acts of returning that bid for connection and love or soothing even in very small and brief moments. So for like couples learn, hey, what is my wife, my kid's stepmom need in these moments where my kids are demanding of my attention and I'm going to give it to them? How can I give her like a knowing glance, a loving glance, or just like pat her knee? Sometimes, my husband does this. He'll like under the table, will just like touch my foot with his foot when like we can feel the conversation is just being completely dominated by 7-year-olds who want to talk about baseball. And I'm
Ugh.
like, why am I even here after I made this entire dinner for everybody? Oh my gosh. It's that little like tap of reassurance of like, I see you. I love you. I'm coming back to you, you know? And the thing is, like, that's what people really need to have secure functioning in their relationship is that feeling that, like, my partner does, in fact, have my back. and learning secure functioning is knowing how to like soothe myself sometimes in those moments, knowing that and trusting that my partner is going to come back and turn towards me. I'm not going to be just like left out there hanging. And
Yeah.
so it takes a lot of work for new couples who have also, step couples have not had the advantage of existing together in a couple bubble for a few years, cultivating what good repair looks like after a missed connection and after a
Mhm.
conflict, knowing what each person really, really needs to feel loved and secure in daily life, because you're thrown into immediately having to learn those things about each other while you're parenting. So, establishing that secure functioning together as a couple takes longer and it is more complicated with the addition of kids.
In some ways, it makes me think a little bit of what you were saying before of if the couple is okay, then the family's okay. And in some ways, there's some truth to that, right? You have
Yes.
to learn how to be a team
Yes.
together, but you can't do that in step families without recognizing the tension that they're holding all the time.
One of the hard parts about step family life, but also like one of the truths is that there are some things that really aren't about fixing so much as the key to doing well together is learning how to just develop mutual acknowledgement of like, man, this is so hard, isn't it? Like bonding and connecting and safe about being
Yes.
able to just acknowledge, like, yeah, this is freaking hard.
Yeah. And I think that's true of a lot of marriages. I think that my experience of being a child in these dynamics is also very interesting because these are kids that don't have the illusion that nothing's going to happen to my parents. And we know that the divorce rate is high in
Yes.
second and third and, so on marriages.
Subsequent
And so
marriages.
I don't know. I don't even know why I said that. I think it's just, it all feels very intense to
Yeah.
me.
It is kind of intense. I think that's the overarching feeling that my husband and I have about our family dynamic is that and the we are starting to actually exit the time frame that it usually takes for the average step family to blend. So that's the other thing, right? Is that it actually takes about between 2 and 7 years for a step family to really
7 years?
find. Yes, 7 years is on, like, the later side if things are particularly complicated and difficult, right? 2 to 3 is on the, "Wow, everything is so freaking easy" end of things. If you are within those first 7 years and you're like, "Wow, this is so hard," that's because that's what's normal. And so we sit in that place of like, yeah, I mean, it took us probably the first 3 years were the hardest. And now we really feel like we're in a groove. Our kids get along extremely well. We have pretty functional relationships with our ex spouses, with our co parents, but it's still just intense all the time.
It's a lot to hold. You're holding
It
a lot
can
of
be. Yeah.
feelings, a lot of grief layers, a lot of change. And then they hit a new milestone. Now we're in high
Yes.
school. And there's a whole
Yes.
nother level of, yeah. Or then the co parent gets remarried. And then they're
Yes.
adjusting to that home, which comes into your home,
Well,
which,
and that is another one of the core challenges that step families face is that ex-spouses, whether they're alive or dead, are a constant presence within your step family life.
ooh, tell me.
Well, I would say, I mean,
I feel
this
like a
is
lot of my people would just went like, nope, nope,
yeah.
nope, nope. Time to leave. Tell me
I
more
mean,
what you mean.
I think, like and this is a thing that a lot of us in is part of, like, the grief process that a lot of us feel in step family dynamics is I still grieve the loss of simplicity, the feeling that, it used to be in my first marriage, my husband and I decided when we're gonna go on vacation, what those dates are gonna be, where we're gonna go, and we just booked it. We weren't having to really check in with anybody. And that is not the universe that we inhabit anymore in our
Yep,
family.
yep.
Yes, we have custodial schedules to work out. We always have to check with two other households, my girl's dad, his household. He's also remarried. She has family. They have vacations to plan. The boy's mom, their household and their schedule, and those sets of grandparents. So there's always that checking in. That nothing simple.
This was certainly and still is my experience when people will say like, "Well, what are you, the youngest or the oldest in your family?" I'm like, "I don't even know how to answer that." Like,
Such a loaded
which
question.
family are you talking about? I had a stepbrother that always felt like my brother because we knew each other our whole lives. But then I have to explain, and I have a half brother. Like, I have all
Oh
these
yeah,
entangled dynamics. So you can't even answer a simple question
yeah,
very easily, right? It's the
yeah.
loss of simplicity.
Exactly. So there's the
Yeah.
loss of simplicity, and that can be a minimal burden to
Yeah.
bear if you have cooperative co-parents. It's a major burden to bear when you have difficult or
Complicated.
high conflict co-parents. And the existence of um, exes, whether the relationships are easy or really strained, puts strain on a new step couple relationship
I
because,
believe it. Yep.
and in pact therapy, which is a couples therapy modality, psychobiological approach to couples therapy is what pact is. And I will say pact in general, I only use in limited ways because it still holds couple as primary and doesn't do a great job of addressing step family dynamics.
It-
But in any case, it's the idea that like in every couple relationship, one of the challenges like is managing the presence of thirds. If the couple is here, thirds is our in-laws, our jobs, my relationship with substances, the kids, whatever. And in a step family dynamic, exes are definitely one of those. And their people, their presences, it's not about eliminating the relationship or getting it out. It's about learning how to manage those relationships effectively. And it can put a lot of strain on on a
yeah.
step couple.
Dynamic I see a lot is I wish my co-parent would insert some sort of thing about their ex. I wish they would tell them off. I wish they would not let them bully them. Like
Yes.
all of these pieces because again, that piece you were talking about being the outsider, being the observer. We're like, "No, she can't treat you like that." Well, there's years of why they've gotten to that place and they got
I
divorced.
think, and I'm wondering like how you see this play out in your practice. I think it's really common that when we have a high conflict co-parent, the other parent, sometimes again, probably in survival mode, can really move towards patterns that really are a lot of accommodation, a lot of accommodating the high conflict co-parents demands and control strategies because it's just easier to give in. It's easier to, for example, like answer the phone the second that high conflict co parent calls, to respond to every text as soon as the text is received, to allow that high conflict co parent to like drop stuff by the house whenever and however they want to because it would it's easier to just say yes than to hold a boundary. Well, that may be arguably functional when you're single parenting with that co-parent, but I'll tell you what, it becomes very hard when a new partner enters the equation and again sees these dynamics from more of a distance and less of an emotional, investment place and is like, wait a second, why is it that every time, it's 9:30 p.m. and your ex has the child that you share together, why is she texting you about your child and why are you immediately answering?
To have We need to have a whole nother discussion about the high conflict families when it's like, she's not your new mom.
Yeah.
She's so crazy. I mean, that could be on either end. You're not going to come in here and take care of my kids.
Oh,
Yikes.
yes.
I mean, I feel like this is what you've really done so well today is describe kind of this is challenging for the best of us, the healthiest of us. And it's hard on kids, it's hard on the parents, it's hard on the co-parents. Every layer of this is challenging and that's okay. It's supposed to be. These are meaningful relationships. Sometimes parents will ask me, you know, is this going to ruin my kid if we get a divorce? Is this going to be hard for them and things like that? And I'm always like, well, yeah, they're going
Yeah.
to have a hard time. That's normal. we actually kind of expect that for a couple years, and then it does get a little bit better, or it can get worse too, but, um, like, with the right support, you can get through the hard into
Yes,
a really, really beautiful, amazing place.
absolutely.
But that kinda extra layer of some of the families that we work with in some capacities where there is somebody really challenging interpersonally, you need a whole 'nother set of skills for that, for sure.
True, and I think there's also really common little traps that even well-meaning step families can move into when it comes to relationships with co-parents, and, again, with no intention of causing problems, like, I mean, I'll, give you an example of something that I see very often. You know, we talked about this a little bit in the beginning of this chat where it's like, okay, man, I'm so glad I have this new partner. I have someone to help me, to give practical help with driving kids
Yeah.
around, making lunches,
Get the
et
groceries.
cetera,
Yep.
being emotionally supportive of, all the things. And so a natural next step is, well, my step parent partner is actively involved in doing lots of parenting help. Let's put them in the group chat between me and my co-parent.
Ugh, I didn't even think about the group chat.
A well-meaning idea. It might even be that the co-parent initially welcomes bringing the step parent into that group chat. The problem is you're now setting up a dynamic where it feels like that step-parent partner has the same amount of say in decision making, the
Yeah.
same amount of, I mean, if we
You've made a
slide into that
triangle.
place. Yeah, and that can very, very often be a recipe for creating new conflict, where if we had just kind of kept our boundaries a little tighter in the beginning, where parent and co-parent are the deciders around parenting issues, and then bring the step parent into sharing those details and information quickly and efficiently, a much better plan, than bringing them in. Yeah,
I couldn't
exactly.
even. I'm not a fan of group chats, quite frankly. 1, they, like, clog up my phone like crazy. 2, there's always somebody that's silent. There's always somebody saying too much. Then somebody puts something in there and then you don't respond quick. Like, it's too much. Then you're trying to text somebody else about what's happening in the group chat and you accidentally text the group. It's bad. It's
Yeah,
bad. You know?
exactly.
It's not
And
good.
you're not getting good context for tone or intent or meaning. It's really easy to get your wires crossed, and suddenly we're in conflict very, very unnecessarily. But again, this is just part of navigating these co-parent
Well,
and ex relationships within a step family. Super common.
it's such a good example because I would think about doing that as like, we're communicating well. Look at us. We're on a group chat, like, yay, we're doing it. And we all need to know where the kid is anyways and who's picking them up. So we might as well. But I think the piece that you pointed out is so telling of how quickly that could go sideways.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very much. And what we do know from the research at this point is that parenting decisions really do need to be parent led. That, that parents, I mean, I could be a professional parenting coach, and it doesn't make
You
me
kind of, I
fit
mean, you
to
are.
insert myself into having a lot of authority around how my husband and his co-parent make decisions about what the kids need right now.
And even as coaches and therapists in our professional roles, we're always switching that hat on and off. We're always saying, you know what? In this scenario, I'm just your friend and I don't really want to act as a child psychologist.
Yeah.
Don't put me in that role. Or, if I were your coach, I would tell you to think about this, but ultimately it's your decision. You're the parent,
Yeah,
you know?
but I will say that is also an extremely challenging place for a step parent to sit in. I mean, it's my biggest challenge without a doubt. Not just because of what I do for a living, but because I had been parenting for 15 years when I met my husband. So I had worked through certain stages and felt pretty confident about navigating basic things that I would see my husband feeling very unconfident in navigating. And so the impulse to want to jump in and fix is so strong. It's very natural and it can be really strong. And a lot of my own personal work has been learning how, like, the best thing that I could do for both of these kids from a shaping perspective and the best thing I can do for my partnership is to exit stage left right now and not insert myself into this process, which is it's hard. Not always get it right. No way.
Well, my friend, we've already lined up another topic for us to talk about. Before I let you go, this has been such a rich and engaging conversation. I'm so grateful for your time.
Absolutely.
How can folks find you? Are you online? Do you have a website? I hear you have a lovely resource for people. So tell us about that too.
Yeah. So I do. I have a website. It's called the Stepfamily Reset. So, yes, if you go to stepfamilyreset.com, you can find me there where I offer coaching. And I'm also in the middle of making some plans to expand some of the services that I offer people because I really, man, I feel a little like an evangelist in some ways of I I have learned so much that
I've
needs to
seen
be
the night.
disseminated. Yeah, because like you were saying, some of this, knowledge and learning that
You
we
don't
now
know.
know about what works for step families has not really been broadly disseminated. So I really want to reach as many people as I can to help them have families that are working, right, and feel really fulfilling. So you can reach me at my website. I also have a YouTube channel.
Ooh.
And you can find me there. You click my name, Alex Harrison, LCSW. And you can find my YouTube channel that has a lot of like longer form videos addressing topics that I think are particularly helpful and very commonly named as pain points in step families.
And I will link all of those as well in the show notes so folks can have them. Tell me about your free resource
Yes.
for
So
folks.
I have it's a free PDF called 5 Ways to Connect with Your Stepkids. So, yeah. And if you go to my website, you can find it there under resources. And I also have a newsletter that I put out every other week. I really don't love getting a bazillion emails myself, but I do like getting helpful tools and resources. And that's what that's really intended to be for people
That's
as
amazing.
well.
Well, I thank you so much for your time and this conversation, and we'll definitely connect again. Thanks again, Alex. It was a pleasure. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Kids First Co-Parenting. If you found this helpful, the best way you can support the show is by following, rating, and reviewing wherever you listen to podcasts, and by sharing it with another mom who could use the support. You can also connect with me on Instagram and Facebook at Learn with Little House, where I share daily tips and encouragement for moms raising kids through high conflict divorce. And if you're ready to go deep and get more tools, scripts, personalized support, and coaching, come join us inside the Kids First Co-Parenting community. You'll find the details at learnwithlittlehhouse.com. Thanks for being here. Just a quick disclaimer. This podcast is for general information and education only. It is not legal advice, it is not mental health treatment, and listening does not create a therapist-client relationship. Laws and clinical needs vary, so please consult a licensed professional in your area who can evaluate and help you with your specific situation. And if you are in a dangerous situation or feel unsafe, contact local authorities or domestic violence resources right away.